Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 2 of our story. If you like this What If story and want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Also, check the description for more great content and my playlist. This story was posted by Balaikava on Wattpad. Now let's start. Stretched endlessly. In contrast, the mage resided in a dark hall made of stone, devoid of sunlight, where the air was cold and heavy with a sense of decay. This gloomy place, lacking any vitality, served as a resting ground for the transfigured allies, ruled by a masterful yet insane lord obsessed with the power of death. 𝐼𝐬 preferred the wild green forests of their home dimension and would have avoided this place if given the choice. However, circumstances forced them to seek aid from their neighbors. For the soldiers of the Emissary of Light, the maze was a trap, designed to confuse even the sharpest senses. Many who entered lost their sanity, and those who did were perhaps the fortunate ones. A hooded figure, voice raspy from age and dehydration, beckoned them to follow to the war room. The remnants of their armor clung to them, once a splendid sight now reduced to mere scraps. 𝐼𝐻𝐬, a former vanguard of their enemies, was known for his chivalry and mastery of the arcane arts. Although he lacked the strength of the twin wings of death or other great warriors, he compensated with fervor. 𝐼𝐬 had heard tales of his deeds but was too young to participate in those battles. Seeing the once mighty angel now diminished was disheartening, upsetting the natural order of life and death. 𝐼𝐬 felt a temptation to end the angel's misery but found amusement in watching him wallow. They followed the figure without question, the journey long and dreary. The air was cold and stagnant, tainted by the remnants of past battles. 𝐼𝐬 recalled lessons from his father, the son of their great king, about the importance of the hunt. Preying on the weak was a natural instinct, and to feed on the inferior was what made a beast strong. The 𝐼𝐻𝐻 tribes played with their food, but for 𝐼𝐬, hunting was a serious endeavor. In every chamber, lifeless bodies of humans and magic beasts were piled high, altered beyond recognition by the wizard's experiments. His subordinates, lacking any sense of intelligence, mindlessly obeyed their MSDR's commands, inflicting these horrific transformations for reasons unknown. 𝐼𝐬 often wondered why the Dragon King had not commanded the mage's demise. The war room was more of a makeshift space, featuring a large oval table of smooth granite surrounded by 8 chairs. Despite their enhanced senses, the monarch of transfiguration had chosen to provide some illumination. Torches lit the walls, and a chandelier crafted from the imagery of fallen angels hung above, faint whispers of their tormented souls echoing in the air. The monarch took pleasure in tormenting the ruler's finest, transforming them into gold while ensuring they remained alive. As the light from the burning blue flames dimmed, it signified the angel's slow demise, prompting 𝐼𝐬 to shudder at the thought of new victims being sought. Dozens of warriors stood guard, all failures of the monarch's experiments. They lacked the sturdy bodies of stone golems, the sorcerous might of archliches, and the ferocity of ghouls. Yet, they were formidable, each as strong as a veteran soldier of the changing breeds and not to be underestimated. Each chair represented a monarch, a place for strategic discussions. One chair bore the familiar scent of 𝐼𝐬's grandfather, a memory he cherished. He voiced his frustration, questioning the absence of a certain individual. A commanding voice responded, reminding him to watch his tone. 𝐼𝐬 recognized the scarred man as 𝐼𝐻𝐬, who approached with a powerful presence, far beyond that of the mindless creatures surrounding them. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 was the finest creation of 𝐒𝐬, the second in command of the transfigured army. 𝐼𝐬 had often thought about confronting him, knowing that the skeletal warrior rarely left his MSDR's side due to a shared vulnerability. An interjection from 𝗏𝐼𝐻𝐬, who knelt in 𝗟𝗶𝐻𝐬, surprised 𝐼𝐬, igniting a mix of shock and anger within him. 𝐼𝐬 glared at his companion, who returned the look with frustration and something deeper. 𝐼𝐬 felt the familiar sting of disappointment wash over him as he knelt on one knee, suppressing the urge to roll his eyes. For the moment, they had to submit to their stronger adversaries. Once they amassed enough strength and found the right opportunity, they would strike back. The beast would rise and conquer the dragons. 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐦𝐸 expressed his regret for his earlier insolence, acknowledging the challenges they faced. The longing to lash out at 𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐼 was strong, but his will to survive burned even brighter. The time for the beastly court to claim their glory would come, and when it did, they would seize it. For now, he had to remain humble, tails tucked in the presence of a fallen foe. 𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐼's hand, clad in leather gloves made from the hide of a black bull, a fearsome tribe of the land titans, served as a reminder of the threat they posed. The actions of this tribe against his kin would not go unpunished, yet 𝐒𝐮𝐦 kept his focus on his ultimate goal. Suddenly, purple flames erupted, and when they faded, a scroll made from human skin appeared. A magenta wax seal marked it as the words and intentions of the monarch of transfiguration. 𝐼𝐼𝐼 opened the scroll and began to read it aloud, a formal way to deliver a message. The voice of the transfigured was crucial, as it proved their existence. Without it, they were no better than the dead. 𝐒𝐮𝐦 noted that at least 𝐼𝐼𝐼 respected them enough to do this. The message conveyed that 𝗟𝗶𝗸 of the Red Stripe clan and 𝐒𝐮𝐦 of the White Wolf clan were granted permission to turn the archipelago known as Japan into their hunting ground. They could conduct trials and hunt anyone they deemed worthy, with the directive to eliminate all and spare none. 𝐼𝐼𝐼's subordinates would assist in strengthening their forces, and they were warned not to waste this opportunity. As soon as 𝐼𝐼𝐼 finished reading, the scroll ignited and turned to ashes in an instant. They had no time to react, but their spirits soared with the knowledge that they had gained what they desired. 𝐼𝐼𝐼 exited the room, leaving the two behind. 𝐾𝐞𝐭 offered to guide them to the exit, which they gladly accepted. The time for the changing court had arrived, and soon they would savor the taste of victory. Izuku Midoriya, a beast tamer, stood ready for battle. His stats reflected his prowess: HP 500, MP 1000, level 62, with impressive strength and agility. He was aware that a hero agency was a business that employed heroes, and the qualifications for such roles had evolved. In the past, a hero merely needed official recognition from their government and a signature to make it official. However, with the emergence of gates, a revision of qualifications became necessary. The first requirement was the ranking of the awakened. The lead hero of an agency had to be at least B rank, with S rank being the highest, to prevent casualties caused by reckless heroes. Many had underestimated the dangers of the gates, leading to disastrous outcomes. As Izuku faced a massive rock golem, he ducked under its outstretched fist, feeling the rush of wind behind him. With telekinetic force propelling him, he charged forward, slamming into the creature's gut. The impact caused rocks to break away from its body, demonstrating the devastating combination of an awakened strength and magical abilities against inferior magic beasts. The golem let out a pained wail as it toppled backward, kicking up dust and dirt. Izuku prepared himself for the decisive blow. The second qualification for a hero agency's leader was mental fitness. Originally, heroes only needed the right attitude, but the appearance of awakened and gates changed everything. Heroes faced challenges that tested their mental health, with some succumbing to fear or becoming intoxicated by their power. There were instances of heroes who had turned villainous, exploiting their positions to satisfy their darker urges. A cowardly hero could be a burden, but a bloodthirsty one posed a far greater danger. Thus, a hero with an agency needed to be a frontline fighter, a paragon of virtue and strength who could think on their feet and remain composed against formidable foes. The final qualification was experience. A hero agency's head needed extensive on-field experience and theoretical knowledge about magic beasts, as well as an understanding of the laws governing hero work and awakened beings. Fighting was essential, but it was not the only focus. As the rock monster attempted to punch him, Izuku activated Spear Hand, feeling energy envelop his fingers. The golem's robust body made it a formidable opponent, and he anticipated that it would be accompanied by smaller rock creatures. Meanwhile, the serpents were handling those smaller foes, gaining valuable training for future encounters. Izuku's experiences in the dungeons had opened his eyes to the dangers they faced, and the actions of the commission had only deepened his suspicions. There was undoubtedly more to the dungeons and gates than met the eye. Chunks of rock erupted as a manicoated limb pierced through the rocky surface. The creature roared, a feeble attempt to mask its fear. It made another move, a hand reduced to a smaller form, striking relentlessly at the monster's head. Whatever cries or actions it intended to unleash were silenced. Izuku continued his assault, delivering as many strikes as he could. Each blow met with less resistance than the last. After the seventh strike, he paused to assess the situation, ignoring the tingling sensation in his hand, likely a side effect of using spear hand too frequently. He noted that the pain had significantly diminished. Every magic beast possessed an essence stone embedded within them, which was the reason people hunted these creatures for a living. The location of these magical crystals varied from monster to monster. A goblin would have one nestled in its nape, while a naga would have it at the base of its spine. Some even displayed them proudly on their foreheads like exquisite jewelry, such as ice elves and dark elves. A stone golem's essence stone, however, was situated in a completely different area. Their bodies consisted of 3 layers of rock. The first layer was a hard exterior, reportedly tougher than reinforced steel and capable of withstanding artillery strikes. The second layer resembled hard plastic, serving as muscles. If the first and second layers were akin to skin and muscles, respectively, the third layer functioned like BLD vessels. Golems and their variations, such as lava and ice golems, lacked BLD or organs like most magic beasts. Instead, they contained a large, round orb of glowing blue crystals, with small tendrils extending outward, resembling whitish-blue roots clinging to the exterior, acting as their heart. Once he succeeded in breaking through the shell, the young hero reached down for his reward. His clawed hand grasped the object, small, fragile, and precious. A gentle tug was all it took to extinguish its light. The tendrils fell apart, and the heart was now in his possession, with a single essence stone protruding from it. He extracted the essence stone and tossed the heart back into the remains. Leaping down from the creature's body, he gestured for one of the serpents to approach. 𝐒𝐮𝐬, the eldest of the 5, slithered forward. Surrounding him were the defeated remains of the golems, from the formidable stone golems to their smaller companions, the gnomes. None had posed much of a challenge, and he had leveled up considerably, at least 2 levels. It was a bit disappointing, but there was nothing he could do about it. Izuku expressed his appreciation for the team, smiling at the serpent. Their tails wagged in unison, accompanied by a hissing sound that conveyed their joy. Each of them was clearly improving in their own way. Choosing this dungeon to raid had proven wise, as the beasts were more accustomed to battling flesh and BLD creatures. Their strongest attributes were ineffective against beings made of steel and devoid of nerves. Runt and Azula reveled in the experience, using their natural physical prowess to crush any foes that dared to confront them. Fang had struggled the most, relying heavily on venom. Scar and Azure had also faced challenges, but not to the same extent as Fang. They proved to be competent in the face of adversity. This marked their 7th dungeon raid, leaving 13 more to conquer. After that, he planned to wait at least 6 months before updating his ranking. He was determined not to settle for B or A ranks but to reach the top tier, where his late father and All Might resided. Achieving that rank would bring him privileges and opportunities, allowing him to do good without hiding. He would also gain access to higher-level gates to raid. As 𝐼𝐼𝐬 walked past the monsters, she inquired if they were finished. The young intellectual woman had agreed to continue assisting him, claiming she owed him more than he owed her. Helping him clear dungeons was her choice, and it was a wise one, as he needed 10 members to participate in a dungeon raid, and registering the beasts wouldn't suffice. She had resolved the member issue by reaching out to weaker awakened individuals, promising them good compensation. The memory of Dongsuk's death briefly pained him. Based on the Nomus, he had been developing a theory. It seemed absurd, yet it made sense considering what had happened to 𝐶𝐮𝐲. He could only hope the man had fought back or done what was necessary. There was nothing more he could do now. He wondered if the people he hired would speak out. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 assured him they wouldn't, as they were mostly retired heroes and drinkers. They wouldn't jeopardize their chance at this opportunity if they knew what was good for them. She picked up a severed hand and tossed it into the large cart. Since the incident with the collection team, 𝐼𝐼𝐬 had grown wary of people, a reasonable reaction given that the last group had turned out to be dangerous. Frustrated and fearful of another betrayal, they had decided to collect the monster parts themselves. With her substantial funds, she had purchased the necessary equipment and spent 4 hours studying related subjects, declaring herself knowledgeable. Izuku felt a pang of sympathy for her. She had never asked for any of this. Her declaration was endearing and made him chuckle. He then decided to scout ahead, instructing the 5 serpents to stay behind and assist her. He wanted to avoid any unexpected monster attacks. The serpents nodded and began their work, using their powerful limbs to gather the remains of the golems and load them onto the carts. The carts were operated by artificial intelligence, allowing them to focus on placing the deceased monsters onto the vehicles. This method also applied to any magical crystals they discovered. The serpents mined deposits using their tails, then placed the crystals on the machines for 𝐿𝐻𝐵. It was an efficient system, though it placed a strain on them. Izuku soon realized that none of the snakes were built for endurance. They tired after mining 2 gates worth of mana. Crystals. This made sense, considering they had to battle numerous monsters, move the bodies, and feed whenever they could. A full belly often made them drowsy. He caught 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐷 dozing off on the battlefield. The snake received plenty of head pats and neck rubs afterward. She was undeniably adorable for a wolf snake. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐷 attempted to resist but was simply too charming. A decision was made: he needed more beasts. As a beast tamer, he needed to leverage his class's strengths. The snakes were quick and versatile, and leveling up in beast domain had granted him 4 additional slots for companions. It began with 5 occupied slots, but now there was potential to add more. The question was what kind of creatures to include. Would the serpents clash with the outsiders? It was uncertain what they desired or feared, as they did not communicate in human language. Werewolves were the first potential recruits since one was already with him. They tended to lower their guards around him. The next candidates were reptilian monsters. The 𝐒𝐮𝐷𝐾s and Yetis had been on his mind for quite some time. They possessed high intelligence, excellent teamwork abilities, and were formidable on their own. Ice bears were also a consideration. He would welcome any bear variations as they were among the fiercest creatures around. As he wandered down the cold, dark hallway, he realized there was only one place they had yet to explore. The other locations had been marked with an X to indicate they had been reached, helping to avoid confusion as they ventured deeper into the gate. Each raid had barely provided him with any experience points, as the monsters faced were too weak. 𝐼𝐶𝐽 had to hire low-ranked awakened, making it difficult to access higher-level gates. As a B rank, she had the right to purchase B rank level gates, but due to their combined levels, the highest they could manage were C rank gates. They were capable, but they needed far more powerful gates to clear. The monsters they had encountered over the past few weeks had made leveling up a challenge. This gate was particularly difficult, being the highest C rank gate, just 30 digits away from achieving B rank. He silently prayed for a favorable outcome as he walked deeper into the hallway. Eventually, he found a gate, an ornate iron structure adorned with gold trims. Unlike the previous gated room, this one lacked strange imagery. There were no markings on the walls, indicating this area had not yet been explored. He smiled at the prospect of the upcoming battle, hoping this was not a boss chamber, lest they need to retreat quickly. With his hands pressed against the doors, he pushed them open. To his surprise, the heavy metal door felt light as a feather under his weight. Once opened, what lay beyond was for him to discover. Darkness stretched as far as the eye could see, an oddity given that the chambers typically had their own lit braziers. The more perplexing part was when he shifted his gaze. Even with enhanced sight and night vision, there was nothing. It was a curious situation to ponder. He considered returning to 𝐼𝐶𝐽 but dismissed the thought. She was a strong heroine, capable of taking care of the others. Although the fear of Kyudai's return lingered, she had insisted he should not worry about it. Despite her reassurances, he could not shake his concern. The snakes had been left behind to protect her, providing cover should she need to escape. Resolving not to waste any more time in contemplation, he stepped through the doors. As he took his 3rd step, the door closed behind him. Suddenly, lights flashed into existence, momentarily blinding him. As his vision cleared, Izuku found himself in yet another arena. However, this one lacked prepared seating and was instead filled with statues of fierce bull-headed monsters glaring down at him. The second detail that caught his attention was the dozens of banners hanging from the ceiling, each depicting different symbols. He recalled some of Psycho's books regarding runes, remembering enough to recognize them as the written language of the magic beasts. In the opposite direction stood two pillars, and between them was a bull-like beast restrained by chains. The chains were long and thick, appearing as good as new. Its red coarse fur covered a muscular body, with 4 legs that could easily crush a man's skull. 2 pairs of menacing gray horns curled above its bovine head. The creature's eyes opened for the first time, as if awakening from a long slumber. The name above it was red, indicating it was at least an A-rank magic beast, possibly the boss of this dungeon. He had been searching for a heavy hitter, so this seemed like a promising start. The bull did not resemble any he had encountered before, but it did remind him of the black bulls. Did they grow extra sets of horns? For a moment, he contemplated facing the beast in his werewolf form but ultimately decided against it. He had been hunting using his human form, and over-reliance on his transformation could lead to his downfall. That was why he had been combating monsters in his human shape. Perhaps conquering this bull would be a feasible task. In an instant, the chains broke, and the beast charged at him. Unable to contain his excitement any longer, he met it head-on. With a swift motion, he threw a punch, his fist connecting with the beast's forehead. For the first time since his reawakening, pain registered in his knuckles. The bull's thick neck twisted, bringing its horns dangerously close to him. Acting quickly, he grabbed hold of the smaller pair of horns aimed at his midsection. With all his strength, he slammed the beast down to the ground, its snout tasting the dirt, which brought him a sense of satisfaction. He twisted the horns, attempting to break its neck to end the fight swiftly. However, the bull's sudden 𝗟𝗓 sent him off the ground momentarily. Izuku grinned at the bull's strength. It was undoubtedly on par with an A rank. He wondered if it possessed the durability of one as well. Releasing one of the horns, he began to transform parts of his hand. The transformation had become smoother, allowing him to visualize a more complex change. His fingers elongated and darkened, the blunt ends sharpening. With one hand gripping the horn and the other ready to strike, he prepared for the next move. Without hesitation, a grin spread across his face as he charged forward. White bone-like protrusions erupted from the bull's hide, and a sharp yelp of pain escaped his lips as he backed away quickly, glancing at his injured hand. The cut was shallow but had drawn blood. He couldn't help but think the bull should have been named Bonemaker, as he had seen enough individuals with transformation-type quirks capable of shaping their bones into weapons and armor. The bull rose to its feet, cracking its neck as it bore down on him. Standing a good 20 feet away, he could hear the bones cracking in place. White carapace emerged from the red fur, resembling a swarm of insect monsters rushing to feast. Izuku laughed at the situation he found himself in, crouching forward as his hands transformed into claws. Long, sharp and darkened nails could slice through rocks with the slightest movement. Izuku Midoriya found himself reconsidering his earlier words. Without hesitation, both opponents charged at him. Izuku, a level 64 beast tamer, felt his heart racing and muscles burning as he faced the formidable bull, Bone. The creature's strength was incredible, possibly reaching an S rank, with impressive speed and endurance. The only advantage Izuku had was that the bull's attacks were straightforward: charge, tackle, or use its horns in an attempt to overpower him. Even now, they were engaged in a struggle that felt more like a wrestling match than combat. Izuku gripped the bull's horn, pouring all his strength into the fight. He had learned the hard way that his claws were ineffective, as evidenced by the scratch marks on the beast's armor. Relying solely on his raw power, he challenged the bull, taunting it silently. The armored beast remained silent, matching Izuku's determination. They were locked in a tug-of-war, both evenly matched, much to Izuku's frustration. Occasionally, he managed to pull the bull down, only for it to rise again with sheer brute strength, tossing him aside. Izuku suspected that the system had placed the bull in this dungeon, a thought that seemed absurd but was the only logical conclusion. He had never encountered monsters bound in chains before, and it made little sense. In a way, The system was pushing him to use his lycanthropy to defeat the beast. A huff from the bull signaled a surge of strength that lifted Izuku into the air. No longer feeling the ground beneath him, he focused his telekinesis on the top of a rocky pillar, propelling himself upward. Once at the top, he sat down, keeping a watchful eye on the furious bull below. Steam seemed to rise from its pores, and Izuku contemplated whether to use his beastly powers. This challenge had revealed how reliant he had become on that power. Aside from his strength, his other stats were lacking, making him feel like a C ranker at best. If he couldn't win this battle without resorting to lycanthropy, his future looked grim. The bull clearly surpassed him in physical capabilities. He wished he had purchased a weapon. Glancing at the chains on the ground, an idea sparked. He lifted his hand and focused his will on the metal restraints. They resisted momentarily but ultimately yielded to his mental command. The chains snapped free and fell into his hands, heavy, strong, and thick. Though a WHP wasn't ideal for close combat, he recalled the hero Midnight, who used one. He had seen enough of her matches to attempt some basic techniques. The system confirmed the quality of the chains, and a smile spread across Izuku's face. It was time to take action. With a flick of his mind, the chains wrapped around his forearms. Although it caused some skin irritation, he could handle it. The monster had to be dealt with, but he wouldn't rely on just one skill. He leaped down from the pillar, and to his surprise, the bull charged at him with its horns. Using telekinesis, he dodged the attack and landed on the bull's back, quickly running along its powerful form. As he closed the distance, he extended both hands forward, using his telekinetic powers to unravel the chains. They lengthened enough to reach the bull's left eye, turning it into a mess. Another pull of telekinesis allowed him to evade the bull's violent thrashing. The chains returned to his side as he faced the beast, skidding to a halt. Without hesitation, he lashed out with the chains, striking one of the bull's forelegs. A grin spread across his face as bits of broken armor scattered from the impact. With a quick yank and a pivot, he struck again, this time hitting the bull's flank. The sound of impact echoed as cracks spread across the beast's armor. Joy flooded Izuku's mind. He had found a perfect weapon. Each movement settled into a rhythm as he twirled and struck, wearing down the bull's defenses. The cracks in the armor deepened, exposing the creature's hide. Another lash struck the bull's skull, driving its head into the ground and creating a crater. Seizing the opportunity, Izuku unleashed a flurry of strikes, each blow pushing the bull's head deeper into the earth. One final lash broke off a horn. Grabbing the broken piece, he dashed toward the unconscious beast, determined to end the fight. With the horn raised high, he propelled it forward with a surge of will. The makeshift projectile flew through the air, but just before it could reach its target, a reddish-brown hand caught it. The hand was enormous, dwarfing the horn beside it. It creaked and groaned briefly before shattering into fragments. Another hand lashed out, striking Izuku's chest. The force knocked the breath from his lungs, and he felt something within him give way as he was sent sprawling. Claws emerged from the transformed foot, tearing through his footwear due to its increased size. Long, sharp nails dug into the ground, anchoring him and bringing him to a halt. The bull rose, cracking its massive shoulders. Izuku's heart sank as he realized the creature had transformed into a minotaur. The beast exuded raw power, its dark red fur covering a muscular frame that combined the upper body of a man with the lower body of a bull, ending in hooves. A single pair of horns curved upward, branching out like a crown. Izuku recalled an intriguing fact about beast-type magic beasts. They were divided into two categories, those resembling earthly animals and those capable of transformation. The bone gnawer belonged to the latter. The bone-white armor had vanished, revealing a body that was solid and imposing, clearly forged through countless battles. Izuku couldn't help but smile at the sight. With his legs spread wide and arms moving, he prepared to let the chains gain momentum. A strong feeling in his gut suggested that if this fight continued, something exhilarating would happen for him. In an instant, the bull vanished, only to reappear directly in front of him. Izuku barely had time to react, ducking under a massive swing. The blow narrowly missed him. He quickly raised the chains, crossing them to form a makeshift shield. The punch landed heavily, feeling as if a bus had struck him. He struggled against the telekinetic force, pushing the enormous limb away. His feet wavered under the weight. Determined, Izuku transformed into the Wolfman. With each shift, the Lycan form felt more natural, like slipping into a favorite shirt. A silent command pushed the 𝐿 back, creating some distance between them. The bull's eyes gleamed with excitement, its lips curling into a fierce grin, eager for battle. The bull reared back its fist and launched it forward. Izuku swiftly stepped to the right, narrowly avoiding the blow. A strong gust of wind erupted from the motion, colliding with a nearby pillar and sending debris flying. Dust clouded the air, obscuring his vision. Izuku's ears perked up, trying to locate the bull. In a split second, he turned, raising his claws to guard against the incoming attack. Pain shot through him as the 𝐿 fist connected, causing his ribcage to buckle. The air was knocked from his lungs, and he fell to the ground, feeling more pain radiate from his back. He must have hit the pillar. He needed to move. Coughing up blood, he wiped his mouth and glanced at the bull, which stood relaxed, waiting for him to rise. Instead of pressing the advantage, it watched him with a cocky grin. Rage surged within him at this treatment, a painful reminder of his past. He felt weak and incapable of facing even the simplest magic beast. This situation, though different, evoked the same feelings he had experienced against the late Kasaka. For a moment, he recalled the battle against the cursed sword. If not for the monster's arrogance, he might have faced death. The thought sickened him. Reaching for the rocks for support, Izuku pushed himself up. He pulled off a piece of rock for his plan. There was only one solution to his current predicament. Untangling the chains from his arms, he cast them aside. He raised his hands in front of him like a boxer ready to strike, widening his stance in preparation to lunge. He had to fight, to use his fists, and to confront the foe before him with everything he had. It was clear that the bull was physically superior, and he would need to rely on cunning to win this battle. Something deep inside him urged him to take this path. He didn't know why, but it felt like the only logical choice. Despite all his efforts, he had drawn no blood. Breaking the armor was just the first step, but no matter what he did, he couldn't inflict any real damage. One of the unspoken rules for awakened in battle was that if no blood was drawn from the monster, it likely ranked above him. Training only prepared him for beasts of equal rank. No matter how much he trained, he could not defeat a higher-level beast. Aside from the injured eye, he had accomplished nothing meaningful, and even that was regenerating. The werewolf sprang into action, sprinting on all fours toward the 𝗟𝗚. The 𝐿 began running on two legs before slamming down. Though briefly shaken, Izuku pressed on. The bull's horn grew to an absurd length, moving faster than he could run. Anticipating the attack, he ducked just in time. As the distance closed, Izuku lashed out with a powerful left hook. His fist connected with the bull's face, shattering the armor and revealing the features beneath. Before the beast could react, Izuku leaped onto its back, straddling the hefty frame and digging into the bone plating until cracks began to spread. One hand gripped the horns tightly. Izuku struck with all his might, each blow delivered with fierce intent. No more holding back, no more weakness. If he couldn't defeat this beast in one-on-one combat, there was no point in seeking power. With each strike, the white carapace shattered into countless pieces. As he prepared for another attack, the beast's body shifted once more. It wasn't long before the creature stood upright, and in an instant, it began to fall. The green-furred wolfman leaped into the air, legs pressing against his back for support. A hand reached out toward the horn, focusing his thoughts on that single point, and the spell responded accordingly. His flight paused midair before propelling him forward, returning to the beast. Izuku felt a shiver run down his spine as the creature prepared itself. Its arms reared back in anticipation, hands tightening into fists. Bones expanded over its limbs, making it appear several times larger than usual. The 𝗟𝗚 clearly aimed to end the confrontation with a single blow, an opportunity Izuku was determined not to miss. He realized the beast was much more formidable than it seemed. This was the perfect moment for him to act. Mana flowed into his hand, just as it did when he formed his spear hand. He sensed a slight change was necessary for success. Pouring all his energy into his hand, he forced it to grow, a technique he had learned from constant battles in dungeons. The more energy he concentrated in a part of his body, the stronger it became. With each conflict, manipulating the energy within him had become easier. Cutting through the heavy armor was impossible. He needed to target the neck. Another weapon would be required to tear through the flesh. Using his telekinetic strength, he propelled himself toward the monster, determined to prevent it from using its monstrous hand. As he approached, he adjusted his trajectory slightly with another telekinetic pull. Pebble struck the beast's eye, causing it to cry out in pain. The werewolf grinned while the bull creature roared in response. Blinded and disoriented, the beast's movements became erratic, allowing Izuku to evade its incoming fist. He latched onto the monster's body, wrapping his arms and legs around its massive torso. With a brief prayer, he dove jaw first toward the neck. He felt the bones forming beneath him, a strange sensation indicating something was trying to grow from the neck. Claws dug into the flesh for a firmer grip as Izuku pulled back, his jaw full of meat. He spat out the morsel, quickly diving back for a second helping, blood dripping from the torn flesh. He could sense the creature collapsing to its knees. Satisfied with his victory, Izuku released his hold on the beast, staring into its eyes with the flesh still in his mouth. Without hesitation, he swallowed the raw meat, discovering an unexpected delight in its taste. After this battle, a feast would surely follow. The creature attempted to speak, or so Izuku assumed from the movement of its snout. He could not understand its words, nor did he care. The language of monsters held no interest for him. The system notified him of the task at hand, to eliminate the 𝐻𝗏. This was a reasonable demand, as heroes dealt with magical beasts, but Izuku had fought with another intention. Now it was time to collect. As he undid his transformation, he noted that the wounds sustained during the battle had healed completely. He raised one hand with determination, the other hand close by. Dragging his clawed hand along the open palm of the other left a thin line of red on his pale skin. The beast was missing a significant portion of its neck, its head lolling to the side, barely hanging on by remaining strands of muscle. Despite its injuries, the creature clung to life, its eyes still filled with intelligence. Izuku addressed the beast, expressing his belief that it was smart enough to understand him. He made an offer. If it served him, he would grant it the power of a werewolf. Although he had no idea what a 𝗟𝗏 afflicted with lycanthropy should be called, terminology was not a concern for him. He explained that his transformation had healing properties and that the beast was too weak to heal itself. It would need the extra strength, but only if it agreed to serve him. He pressed his bleeding palm closer to the creature's snout, just out of reach for it to lick but close enough for it to smell. The beast hesitated before tentatively liking the blood, soon greedily consuming more. It stopped when he pulled his hand away, no longer needing to feed as its wounds began to close. The creature traced a hand over its injured area, confirming the absence of wounds. With its eyes closed and head bowed, another surprise awaited Izuku as the beast stood on its two legs. The first leg bent, followed by the other. Izuku grinned at the sight. It felt right to have such a mighty creature bending the knee to him. The idea of becoming a beast tamer was more appealing than ever. He would need to discuss this with 𝐼𝐶𝐬 afterward. She deserved to know about this strange power. Perhaps it would encourage her to assist him more in the future. The system congratulated him on completing a hidden quest, acknowledging his success in subduing the 𝐻𝗏. It calculated the total points earned from the completed objectives, factoring in his remaining health. The calculation complete, he received Berserker's rings, necklace, earrings, and bracelet, leveling up 10 times. Having tamed the 𝐻𝗏, the system prompted him to give it a new name. He had successfully defeated the misfortune of the dungeon and was offered the chance to take its home for expansion. 𝐼𝐶𝐬, who generally did not favor magical beasts due to their brutish and violent nature, made an exception for those tamed by her friend. Her amber eyes, wide as magic orbs, focused on the creature, its slit pupils reminiscent of a reptilian beast. Most would have been struck with fear, and 𝐼𝐶𝐬 was no exception. As one of the snake-like creatures leaned forward, purring with a sound comparable to the roaring engines of four-muscle cars. She realized she had never encountered beasts that behaved like these. The number of heroes with animal-based quirks was common, but those with animal-themed abilities were rare. Several nations had taken a census of awakened individuals to determine the rarity of such skills, but only those who obtained a skill naturally through awakening were counted. None were runestone users. 𝐾𝐿 understood the difficulty of this situation, as 1 out of 10 awakened individuals would gain a skill during their first awakening. It was generally agreed that one's personal background influenced their physical parameters as an awakened individual to some degree. The famous Korean superheroine, Blade Dancer, was well known as an athlete before her incident, which contributed to her exceptional speed in battle. America's strongest hero, Thomas Andre, leads a challenging life in the slums of Detroit, where he has become a formidable force. The ranking system in this world considers individuals based on their mana pool. Those with lower mana, like CS and DS, gain versatile skills such as personal inventory or danger sense. In contrast, those at higher levels, around ranks B, A and even S, acquire flashy and destructive skills like transformation and energy constructs, along with the occasional massive energy blast. For every 10 ordinary awakened individuals with superhuman abilities, only 1 or 2 achieve higher ranks. Taming magical beasts is a different challenge altogether. No awakened, even those who can contract elemental beings, can tame monsters. Even those who can transform into beasts find it impossible to befriend them, yet Izuku managed to achieve the extraordinary. A nudge from Runt brought 𝐾𝐿 back to reality, causing her to tense and glare at the creature. She found her friend's naming sense rather peculiar, as the name seemed ironic given the beast's size compared to its siblings. Despite her initial reservations, she was growing accustomed to their presence. While calling them adorable was out of the question, she could admit they were comfortable companions. Her delicate hands ran over Runt's furry neck. 𝐾𝐿 had been observing the 5 snakes closely, noting that none resembled any monster she recognized. They lacked the paralyzing gaze of a basilisk and did not possess the sharp claws of a gorgon. The absence of hands ruled out the possibility of them being nagas. The closest match she could think of was the bunyip, known for inhabiting swamps, but that was quickly dismissed. Bunyips also had fangs similar to those of saber-toothed tigers. The idea that they might belong to an entirely new species intrigued her. It had been nearly 2 decades since humanity first encountered magical beasts, and studying these creatures had become a top priority, especially with the arrival of powerful beings like 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐸 on Earth. Every new encounter with magical beasts was meticulously analyzed. Behavior, natural abilities, magical capabilities, and intelligence were all scrutinized. No detail was overlooked to ensure humanity could confront these creatures on equal footing. Many heroes had sacrificed their lives in this pursuit, and a significant number of magical beasts were named after mythical monsters, as nearly all bore some resemblance to them. The acknowledgement of expanding humanity's understanding of magical beasts appealed to her, adding another achievement to her long list of accolades. The coarse, rough brown fur covering the neck of Runt reminded 𝐾𝐿 of real wolves. The thickness of the fur resembled a lion's mane, providing protection against any magical beast attempting to bite. She had witnessed a 𝗃𝐵 trying to wrestle with one of the snakes, only to find itself on the receiving end of a powerful tail swipe. This was no small feat, considering 𝗃𝐵 were among the strongest subspecies of goblins, with physical strength comparable to a C rank magical beast. So far, there were no signs of magical abilities, so she continued to document the physical traits of the 5 snakes. Their fangs were capable of neutralizing D-rank magical beasts and could even penetrate the solid body of a stone golem, albeit leaving the snakes with sore jaws. Further studies would be necessary to evaluate their effectiveness against higher-grade foes, with visits to lava golems and frost golems prioritized. There was also the question of growth. Unlike the awakened who protected humanity, magical beasts collectively had the potential to grow stronger. Some were clearly superior, as documented cases indicated. Orcs, ice elves, and goblins served as prime examples. Given Izuku's comments about them, it was highly likely they could reach a higher rank or even excel within their class. 𝗏𝐾𝐭 was also curious about the method Izuku used to acquire the 5 snakes. When she inquired, he was evasive, offering vague responses that were difficult to decipher. After several attempts, he finally relented, especially under the pretense of withholding assistance. He claimed he had purchased them from a local pet store and had used his powers on them. 𝗏𝐾𝐭 found this explanation absurd, as it was clear to her that it was a blatant lie. However, she decided not to press further, as interacting with him could yield more insights. The large snake leaned forward, emitting a low rumble that indicated it enjoyed her touch. She noticed the other 4 snakes lying on the floor, much to her amusement. Izuku had mentioned that the snakes had come to appreciate her presence. 𝗏𝐾𝐭 found the situation amusing, acknowledging that a group of fur-covered snakes seemed to enjoy rubbing against her. She chuckled to herself, realizing how peculiar it sounded. As she prepared to resume her work, the sound of footsteps caught her attention. She turned from the 5 serpents to see Izuku returning through the passageway he had left earlier, this time accompanied by a beast. It was a minotaur, reminiscent of those from Greek mythology, known for its bull's head and human body. This B-rank magical beast occasionally included stronger specimens that rested comfortably at higher ranks. The magical energy radiating from the bullman indicated it was clearly an A-rank monster. 𝗏𝐾𝐭's knowledge of beast-type monsters was limited, given the vast variety of species. Canine-type beasts alone encompassed 14 different species. Their written languages were still in the early stages of development, resembling primitive forms of human writing, with scratches depicting animals or plants they attempted to describe. In contrast, ice elves had a well-structured language and were one of the most developed groups of magical beasts. They possessed written languages, clothing, battle tactics, and complex tools, showcasing strong traces of civilization. Through studying their language, 𝗏𝐾𝐭 learned that ice elves were a distinct group among the various elf-like creatures. This distinction was linked to an entity of ice and snow that had brought about significant changes for them. The thought made her snort, as they bore a striking resemblance to a famous work by a late author. While American heroes referred to them as White Walkers, Koreans dubbed them 𝐼𝐼𝐻𝐾𝐭. Some cultures named magical beast species according to their own traditions. 𝗏𝐾𝐭's friend's new companion could be a bone gnawer or an iron maker for all she knew. They all appeared similar to her, belligerent, covered in fur, and possessing the muscle mass of 4 bodybuilders. The red fur indicated an association with the red hooves or bloody horn tribes. 𝗏𝐾𝐭, hefting her spear with the sharp end aimed cautiously at the creature's belly, inquired about the beast beside Izuku. It had yet to attack, but caution was always wise. Izuku sheepishly admitted he hadn't come up with a name for the creature, asking if she had any suggestions. 𝗏𝐾𝐭 raised an eyebrow, skeptical about naming a magic beast. Her gaze shifted from the muscular man to the horned creature at his side, and then back to him. Naming the beast seemed absurd, especially when it growled, a sound reminiscent of thunder during a storm. 𝗏𝐾𝐭 reminded him not to call it that, as it was sensitive. He retorted, questioning what the beast was sensitive to, especially coming from someone who couldn't even break a gold lion's claws. His nod made her groan, and she found it almost hilarious that the creature agreed with its new owner. If he wanted a name, she decided to oblige. She asked him about the creature's skills and how he had tamed it, which caught him off guard. Curiosity drove her. If they were going to name the bull, she wanted it to be special. She expressed her fear of losing her knowledge about beast-type magic beasts. Izuku, deep in thought, liked his lips, a habit she had noticed. He explained that the creature could grow a white carapace all over its body, extend its horns for ranged combat, and was one of the changing breeds, which further defined its nature. Initially, it appeared as a large bull but could stand on 2 legs and throw its arms around. The creature's ability to grow bone armor and shift into a bipedal form indicated its status as a beast-type monster, part of a hierarchy similar to that of Earth-based animals. This resemblance had once led to misconceptions until a hero from Russia, Yuri Orlov, captured a group of shadow bears and witnessed their transformation. This event revealed the existence of the changing breeds and the hierarchy among these creatures, where strength and a longing for depth reigned supreme. 𝗏𝐾𝐭 smiled, identifying the creature as a bone gnawer. Izuku suggested the name Minus, referencing the origin of the Minotaur, which made Saiko cringe. He noticed her reaction and acknowledged her concern about the name. She assured him that he could choose whatever name he liked, even something simple like Betsy or Howard. However, he wanted something more epic, as he had wrestled the creature into 𝐿𝐵𝐵𝐵 and earned its loyalty. Saiko pondered for a moment, then suggested the name Enkidu, after the beast that fought against the ancient Sumerian king, Gilgamesh. Izuku liked the name and considered calling the creature Gilgamesh, to which it responded with a low rumble and gentle thuds of approval against the ground. Saiko found herself drawn to Izuku, intrigued by his ability to grow stronger through combat, a notion that challenged the norms of awakened individuals. Typically, awakened beings could not surpass their initial rank without undergoing a reawakening, and even then, knowledge about such transformations was largely theoretical. If Izuku's true nature became public, it could lead to disaster, as many nations would seek him out, demanding his allegiance. The thought of the consequences sent a shiver down her spine. History had shown that those with power would go to great lengths to maintain the status quo, crushing any threats to their demps. Saiko asked him if he could indeed grow stronger, catching him off guard. He stepped back slightly, revealing a hint of fear. She reassured him that after working together for some time, it was impossible not to notice his improved performance, especially after defeating an A-rank magic beast alone. He questioned what she wanted to do next, expressing his reluctance to harm a friend and jokingly asking if he needed to buy her silence. An uncomfortable silence fell between them as they exchanged glances, both understanding the gravity of the situation. Izuku knew her well enough to realize she was reasonable and wouldn't act rashly. The serpent and the bull observed quietly, taking in the unfolding events. When Saiko burst into laughter, it was genuine and filled with mirth. She assured him that she wanted nothing from him, wiping away a tear of laughter and playfully slapping him on the shoulder. A meaty thwack resonated when her hand landed. Saiko reflected on how knowing Izuku had been an experience unlike any other. She felt that if she continued walking by his side, she would encounter even more fascinating things. They were heroes, after all, tasked with finding and defeating monsters. Izuku stood in stunned silence before joy washed over him, his lips breaking into a smile as he nodded in agreement. They could leave now. Saiko suggested visiting a local restaurant. She was aware of her privileged upbringing as the only child of two successful professionals. As a child, she had everything a girl could longing, from high-quality toys to the best education money could buy. Her mother had sent her to an all-girls school, hoping to shield her from distractions and prevent her from making poor choices. Saiko often rolled her eyes at that notion, as the girls around her seemed more preoccupied with boys than anything else. Spending time with Izuku made her realize his innocence and curiosity about the world, but she also sensed a deep sadness within him, stemming from being quirkless in a society that valued superpowers. His father's death during a catastrophic dungeon break had left a lasting impact on him, and Saiko couldn't fathom how he managed to remain so resilient. As they prepared to eat, Saiko reminded him to slow down and chew his food properly while she skillfully pried open her chicken drumsticks. They had collected loot from the defeated stone golem and were now heading to a nearby restaurant. Upon entering the KFC, they attracted curious glances, though the patrons remained polite and respectful, quickly returning to their own meals. Izuku devoured his food with surprising cleanliness and efficiency, despite the large quantities he consumed. In contrast, Saiko opted for a simpler meal: 2 spicy chicken drumsticks, coleslaw, bread, and a bowl of chicken rice with chili packets. She questioned him about using his powers, and he confirmed it, prompting her to ask him to revert back. Their playful banter continued as they argued over the amount of food he was eating, both enjoying the light-hearted exchange. Meanwhile, Huang Dongsu believed that the world revolved around those in power. Some dismissed his views as childish, but he considered them delusional fools living in bubbles. In his experience, wealth and quirks defined power, and history showed that victors were those with strength, not those fighting for ideals. He stepped off the plane, adjusting his shades to shield his eyes from the bright sunlight. The elite sunglasses he wore were a gift from the scavenger's agency, crafted by a skilled artisan and enhanced with high-level features. Arriving at Tokyo's international airport, he stifled a yawn while dragging his luggage. A stewardess offered to help, but he declined, preferring to carry it himself. The contents were important, and he trusted no one else to handle them. As he navigated through the bustling airport, he was greeted by an unexpected sight. The grin spread across his face as he recognized the commission's representatives sent to welcome him. Dong-Su had read about the exploits of various heroes, particularly the high-caliber S-rank heroes like 𝐾𝐿 Tamaki, who was among those desired by his boss for recruitment. Dressed in a three-piece suit suitable for a government agent, 𝐾𝐿 offered a courteous bow and a smile. His red feathered wings were neatly concealed beneath the fabric. The man noticed the slight slouch in 𝐾𝐿's posture and the bags under his eyes. He was Japan's Public Hero Safety Commission's personal S-rank operative, though Dong-Su preferred to think of him as an attack hawk. It was not every day that they had the sidekick of the national-level heroes visiting. Dong-Su laughed as he approached 𝐾𝐿, placing a hand on the avian man's shoulder. He suggested that 𝐾𝐿 should consider leaving his country for a better opportunity, as his boss could offer a more lucrative salary in American dollars. 𝐾𝐿 politely declined, expressing his fondness for his homeland, its food, and its scenery. Dong-Su shrugged, mentioning that they had their own villas but quickly shifted the conversation back to business. He escorted 𝐾𝐿 to a nearby car, where they loaded Dong-Su's luggage into the trunk before getting in. As the vehicle moved, Dong-Su gazed out at the distant city. He pondered the unusual task his boss had assigned him, one that seemed linked to his deceased brother. It was a job that required him to get his hands dirty, something he hadn't done since leaving Dong-Suk behind. Though he had always found enjoyment in the thrill of combat, there was something uniquely satisfying about the human experience. To gain the Goliath's empathy, the requirements were straightforward: complete 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 to the powerful blonde berserker. Dong-Su reflected on why his brother had chosen Japan as a new hunting ground, considering the risks involved. If All Might or one of the S-ranks had captured him, the consequences would have been severe. He recalled news reports of some of Dong-Suk's former teammates getting caught, leading to a chaotic confrontation. The victims had managed to escape, and Dong-Suk had been forced to flee after one of them survived long enough to reveal crucial information. It was a convoluted situation, and Dong-Su had invited the man to join him in the scavenger's agency, but his brother stubbornly clung to his pride. Older siblings often felt a sense of responsibility, believing they should lead the way for their younger siblings. Dong-Su thought it foolish for Dong-Suk to remain loyal to South Korea after losing Jeju Island. The scavenger wielded immense power, second only to the strongest national-level heroes. Millions in fortune could have been theirs, but pride had kept his brother from seizing the opportunity. Dong-Su whispered to himself, lamenting his brother's choices. 𝐾𝐿, noticing his distraction, inquired about his thoughts. The traffic was heavy, crawling along the highway. Frustrated, Dong-Su leaned back and pulled out his phone, dismissing 𝐾𝐿's question and commenting on Japan's current struggles, including rising dungeon break rates and increased criminal activity among the awakened. 𝐾𝐿 acknowledged the situation but remained tight-lipped about sharing further news, emphasizing his professionalism. Dong-Su relished the wary look on 𝐾𝐿's face, aware that his own strength surpassed that of the blade dancer from his home country. With a quirk inherited from his parents, he was a formidable force in battle. 𝐾𝐿 was one of Japan's top S-ranks, standing out among heroes who typically operated as pro-heroes. Dong-Su, with a hint of menace, warned 𝐾𝐿 that he was not as even-tempered as his boss. 𝐾𝐿 responded with a smile, feigning fear at Dong-Su's words. Dong-Su, enjoying the banter, requested information on two individuals, Izuku Midoriya and 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴. He produced a small card and handed it to 𝐾𝐿, indicating he would rest during the ride. However, he had no intention of sleeping. Instead, he would keep his eyes closed and think of ways to confront the one responsible for his brother's demise. The two individuals he sought information about had been involved in his brother's last mission, and Dong-Su suspected they had betrayed him. 𝐾𝐿 asked why Dong-Su was interested in the two provisional heroes, to which Dong-Su countered with a question about a magic beast resembling Japan's best doctor. He also sought confirmation regarding the presence of Lady Justitia and her two companions in Japan. The silence that followed was palpable, and Dong-su reveled in his small victory, allowing his mind to wander to thoughts of retribution. Meanwhile, Gilgamesh greeted a group of 5 young serpents, who regarded him with curiosity. Their scales were unmarked by the battles that seasoned older serpents bore, shining with a youthful luster. It lacked the weariness of age and battle scars. Through scent and sight, Gilgamesh could tell that all 5 had been blessed by the Lord of Beasts. They were larger than most hissers and had a distinctive cloak of fur around their necks. Their bodies were clearly more robust as well. Azula expressed curiosity about their nature, asking what they were. Gilgamesh found the name Blue Light fitting for one of them, having been mesmerized by their long, slithery forms before. One had even offered to share a resting place with him for the night, but he had politely declined, knowing it would not lead to offspring. Gilgamesh introduced himself with pride, stating his name. Scar, the oldest among them, interrupted with a question about why he shared the same space as them. Gilgamesh noted that Scar was a fitting name, perhaps indicating that their king possessed a kind of foresight. He hoped to see the serpentine creature grow strong and adorned with fine battle markings. The others hissed in agreement as Gilgamesh scratched his fur-covered chin in deep thought. He wondered if this was why the Lord had offered him a taste of his power, to educate the young snakes. He was knowledgeable about important histories and felt a sense of responsibility to share this wisdom, even if becoming a teacher was not what he had expected. When he asked if they did not know what they were, their synchronized head shake confirmed their confusion. Sighing, he decided to sit down on the smooth rocks, finding it a comfortable place to rest. He introduced himself again, mentioning his former name, Bone-Nar, and his pride in being a member of the Bone-Nar tribe. The young ones blinked in confusion at his words, a reaction he found understandable given their lack of education. Azure asked what he meant by formerly known as Bone-Nar, and Gilgamesh thought Blue Striker was a fitting name for him. He explained that names were given to adults after 10 battles, based on their greatest accomplishments. Younglings like them would not yet have received names but would be referred to by their tribe. Fong, with her sharp fangs, expressed interest in learning more about him and their own identities. Gilgamesh noted that they were clearly in need of a teacher, observing that they were still young and inexperienced. An idea struck him, and he proposed to tell them about the eternal hate war, a topic that would prepare them for the battles ahead. The young ones were eager to learn, asking questions about the hate war. Gilgamesh noticed their liveliness, a stark contrast to his own youth when he had been quiet during the tribe elders' tales. He began to share the story, capturing their attention. Long ago, before their existence, there was a benevolent king who ruled over our appealing forest. One day, a piece of heaven fell to earth, crashing into the forest. The curious king sought it out and found an appealing lady dressed in strange materials that reflected the sun's light. As he approached to help her, she awakened and, in a sudden turn, struck down many of the king's friends. Heartbroken, the king buried his fallen kin and, consumed by grief, commanded his remaining subjects to prepare for battle against the heavenly beings that continued to descend from the sky. With his army, the king fought valiantly but found their physical powers insufficient against the bright light of their enemies. In his sorrow, he decided to confront the heavenly soldiers, hoping for a peaceful resolution. However, the angels took the opportunity to strike down many more, including the king himself. In his final moments, an entity of darkness approached him, whispering promises of great power in exchange for an unknown price. Desperate, the king agreed to the trade, returning to life with newfound strength, which he used to fight back against the heavenly forces. The young ones listened intently as Gilgamesh explained that the heavens never ceased sending soldiers, leading to an eternal conflict known as the Hate War. They hungered for more knowledge, and he willingly provided it. Gilgamesh, whose name meant "he who submits to none" in the language of the gods, felt a sense of pride in his identity, even if it was bestowed upon him by a victor. Many born in his year had perished before reaching maturity, while those who survived long enough to gain gray hair earned the right to reproduce. He recalled the teachings of his father, who had shared stories of his mother, lost to a silver warrior. The lessons of the Bone-Nar tribe echoed in his mind. Never shorn the horns, never flee from a fight, and never give up in the face of a superior. The fear of an eternity in darkness motivated him to train hard and grow strong, preparing for the battles that lay ahead. Should death come for him, he would like to see his mother again. As for his father, a nod of approval from the bull would be nice. When the horns atop his skull grew to 2 cubits, his father deemed him ready to join the war effort and assigned him as the leader. The ancient art of war was passed down to him, and the tribe elder recognized his worthiness. Many younglings joined them in their endeavors, and he still remembered some of them. They lost the battle. He fled while some fought, a few cried for mercy, and others escaped like him. He hid in a gap between dimensions, one of many safe havens for soldiers. This particular gap had a contingent of stone golems as protectors who allowed him to stay without demanding anything in return. In silence, he honed his body, hoping one day to take exact revenge for the others and for his pride as a 𝐻𝐻𝐻. He never imagined life would give him the chance to educate 5 young serpents, to taste defeat at the hands of their new king. He would utilize this opportunity to the fullest, to fight for the new king, to die for the new king, and to become the king's mouth, ears, eyes, and everything else. Sharp claws found their way into a monster's toned body, an edifice of steel known for its warrior prowess. Yet, the body was now opened as if a butcher had done his work. The green-furred werewolf's natural weapons dug deeper into the wound, drawing forth life-sustaining blood. The owner, a green-skinned monster in humanoid form, could only mutter in a strange language, cursing him. In a flourish, the claws were drawn out. Spinning on the ball of his feet, the werewolf's left limb connected with the warrior's neck, sending blood spraying into the air. Drenched in it due to close proximity, he paused momentarily to contemplate the monster's words. After acquiring Gilgamesh as a soldier, he continued to delve into dungeons. Ending the lives of monsters was their sworn duty, and with each kill, he grew stronger. All seemed well, but strange events began to unfold. Nothing major, except he could understand the words of the monsters. Some, like a hobgoblin warrior demanding explanations or the recently slain orc giving a generic curse, startled him when it first happened. The powers he wielded were actively changing him, yet he felt nothing was amiss. His emotions remained accessible, and Psycho helped run psychological tests. Everything matched his past records, although she did mention he had grown more aggressive. It started small, with him becoming more confident and actively participating in raids. With every fight he grew bolder and more willing to take risks. One could assume it was simply the joy of gaining a massive power boost. However, that notion faded as Psycho explained how his approach to combat changed with each raid. Instead of assessing opponents and keeping his distance as he usually did, he charged in with fervor. Refined martial skill was replaced by brutish strength, and even his methods of execution became more brutal, splattering blood everywhere and causing more damage than intended. She claimed he sported a grin as he pulled the head of a lizard man. His assessments were in line with careful observation. He felt the change as he surveyed the aftermath of the battle around him. One of his many works, and he was glad Psycho wasn't there to witness it. Dismembered bodies of lizardmen lay scattered, with his serpents feasting on the remains. The singular bull chewed on bones in quiet contemplation. For reasons beyond him, the bull's growling and the serpent's hisses were untranslated, leaving him confounded, perhaps a result of the system's machinations. A beast tamer who couldn't communicate with his pets. With every point invested in his stats, his might grew, along with his fear. But what action should he take? He needed money, and to gain more, he had to strive for power. To obtain larger sums of cash, he needed to tackle higher-ranked gates. Achieving that meant more power. He solemnly thought about needing more power as he glanced at a lifeless body. Nestled in the chest was the essence stone. His senses, upgraded by the system and sharpened through days of combat, allowed him to detect the vital parts of a monster, a recent ability. It was an unheard-of case, considering that awakened individuals typically had one of their 5 senses enhanced far beyond their ranking. All Might claimed he could hear people calling for help 5 miles away, while the Commission's sole S-rank could see up to 3 miles ahead with matching reaction speed. Watching that Hawkman fight was wickedly cool. All he had to do was pay attention, keep his eyes on the opponent, and think only of defeating it. Whatever means necessary to ensure its BLD was spilled, not his. Bending down to meet the monster's lifeless body, the nail of his index finger grew to a small knife's length. He dragged it across the scaled underbelly, drawing a thin line of BLD. There was also the eventful encounter with the famous Dr. Garaki. Somehow, that gentle doctor had transformed into some kind of monster. It was an insane idea, considering the man had just attended the opening ceremony of another hospital in France. Revealing the encounter to the commission led Psycho and him to agree to keep it a secret, making him feel as though a conspiracy was unfolding behind the scenes. It was as if the world was urging him to grow stronger. If not for the money to pay his mother's hospital bill, then for protection against unknown elements. Clearly, there were forces at play, possibly equal to the national-level heroes. Worst-case scenario, that old man was on par with 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐸. Hopefully, that was not the case, or he would genuinely be in trouble. He didn't know how many gates he needed to raid to reach their level. Oh, who was he kidding? It was just coping on his part. Perhaps after the next gate, he would undergo a re-evaluation. The amount of mana he possessed should place him at least at C rank. The transformation skill would make him highly valuable to others as well. He shouldn't delay any longer. A notification popped up, taking him by surprise. He had successfully cleared the gate's boss and was prompted to take the dungeon for himself. Without hesitation, he accepted the offer. This was a new feature recently added to the system, allowing him to claim dungeons for himself, first revealed after defeating Gilgamesh. At some point, he had planned to add more magic beasts and wondered how to overcome the limitations imposed by the system. The last battle had provided a solution, one he greedily intended to put to good use. The procurement process was straightforward. There were no dramatics involved. There was no sudden glow or tremor in the dungeon. Instead, a notification appeared, indicating that the process was complete and the dungeon now belonged to him. Excluding Gilgamesh's dungeon, this marked the acquisition of his third dungeon. He could now host an additional 20 magic beasts, although finding the right monsters had proven challenging. He wished he could locate more animal-type magic beasts. There was an idea he had considered, but for ethical reasons he decided against it. He pondered whether Psycho would assist him with that endeavor. With Gilgamesh lending an extra pair of hands, the task would take less time. There was no need to rush the magic beasts' feeding, allowing them to take their time. Izuku gestured for Gilgamesh to help with the deposits. With the remnants of a lizard man caught between its teeth, Gilgamesh nodded and swallowed the last bits. It reached out its hands and slashed at the empty space to the right, creating a BLD red tear shaped like claw marks. Those same hands entered the rift, retrieving a pair of bags. Gilgamesh's massive hands easily wrapped around their straps. After placing them on the ground, he pulled out a pickaxe. Gilgamesh followed suit, opting for 2 pickaxes, which appeared small in his hands, or rather, the red-furred bull was the one who seemed large. They began their work without exchanging words. Gilgamesh focused on one large cluster while Izuku tackled another. Their progress was swift, typically taking around 2 hours to clear out all the magic crystals. However, this time it took an additional hour due to the unusually large deposits they encountered. The room would have been silent if not for the occasional hissing of the snakes and the sounds of magic crystals shattering into smaller fragments. The snakes assisted in the collection process, using their large mouths to pick up the pieces and deposit them into the carts. Izuku had extracted the large contraption from his inventory, which included the carts purchased by Psycho. They had agreed that he would share half of what he earned with her, a deal he was more than happy to accept. Time and again, she had proven to be a reliable ally and trustworthy friend, making it a fair arrangement considering he was earning the salary of a C-rank strike force. As time passed, Izuku rested an elbow on his propped-up pickaxe, not from fatigue but from a longing to observe the others at work. Gilgamesh effectively utilized his strength, moving larger chunks of crystals into the carts and bags. The Minotaur was a natural miner, striking with a steady yet powerful rhythm. They had only spent an hour and a half in this dungeon alone. The snakes had finished their meal and were waiting for the loaded bags strapped to them. The carts were pulled by the snakes, their tails gripping the handlebars, while the wheels did the rest. Gilgamesh demonstrated his worth once again, ensuring the harnesses and straps were properly secured onto 𝐒𝐮𝐬, 𝗏, and 𝗟𝐬. Psycho had instructed him on how to secure the bags and carts, something Izuku facilitated to avoid any potential mishaps. The remaining 2 snakes were not needed for this laborious task, as the 3 were sufficient. Additionally, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 and his 2 younger siblings favored physical strength, making them well-suited for the task. He believed this action would help improve their strength and endurance. The others were not interested in such endeavors, as they wanted to ensure the cargo remained undamaged before 𝐿𝐵𝐻. The snakes moved, and the bulls followed, their assigned cargo trailing behind with their leader observing the motions. They walked at a slow but steady pace, as the dungeon and gate were upheld by the will of the Wolfman. One of the significant benefits of owning a gate was that it remained open until the bosses were defeated, unlike the immediate dissolution of a dungeon filled with ferocious monsters, which could lead to potential dungeon breaks and mana contamination in the surrounding areas. Izuku inquired about Gilgamesh's enjoyment of the work so far, assuming that both Gilgamesh and the beasts could understand him, even if he struggled to comprehend them due to the system's interference. This did not deter him from communicating, even if it was mostly one-sided. He acknowledged that it might not be the most fulfilling work. Reflecting on his experiences in the fitness world, Izuku understood why people referred to large muscles as guns. Individuals like Kirishima, All Might, and Endeavor made sense alongside the many bodybuilders at the gym. The red-furred bull dwarfed them all in size. When Gilgamesh rolled his shoulders, it resembled a mass of fleshy mountains shifting. They were enormous, each as large as a missile launcher. Izuku considered that perhaps 𝐾𝐮𝐬𝐷 blessing was indeed a blessing. He mused that defeating monsters might be more satisfying. He reassured Gilgamesh that they would soon have the chance to raid a C-rank dungeon, as Kirishima had agreed to join them. Gilgamesh briefly glanced at him, an expression that Izuku recognized as judgmental, reminiscent of the looks he received for being quirkless. Changing the subject, he asked Gilgamesh about weapons, suggesting a warhammer. Psycho had been using stone golems to create tools, and he wondered if Gilgamesh wanted anything, like a warhammer or a shield. Gilgamesh shook his head in refusal, which made sense since the bull preferred to fight barehanded. Izuku insisted that Gilgamesh would need to wear armor, regardless of his feelings about it. Gilgamesh seemed to ponder this, and when he nodded, Izuku mirrored the expression. Upgrading his strongest beast was a top priority, and he also wanted to acquire protective gear for the snakes, as they were just as important to him as Gilgamesh. The berserker item set he wore was quite effective, enhancing his abilities. He noted that when his health bar decreased, he received a significant boost. After nearly an hour of travel, they finally reached the entry point and exited the gate. Gilgamesh growled in annoyance at the sunlight, taking a moment for his eyes to adjust to the brightness. This adjustment lasted only a second before he found himself standing in a parking lot. It was midday, explaining the loud noises of cars and trains moving about. White-collar workers were likely leaving their workplaces to grab lunch during their breaks. Traffic was heavy, a common sight in the city. 4 days prior, a gate had appeared in front of an apartment complex. The number of gates had increased significantly, keeping heroes and government agents busy. No one wanted to tackle a lowly D-rank gate due to its minimal rewards, so Izuku eagerly took it on. Now, he stood with the tamed monsters unloading carts, surrounded by numerous passers-by. Some were taking pictures and chatting with friends. Through his experimentation and personal experience, Izuku discovered that his sense stat enhanced not only his mana sensing but all 5 senses. This allowed him to overhear snippets of conversations from a distance. When he focused on one person, more details came to light. He heard comments about him, including surprise at his status as a hero and admiration for his appearance. While he tried to ignore the negative remarks, it felt nice to receive praise, and he couldn't help but notice a girl showing interest in him. A well-dressed young man with striking indigo skin and yellow rings approached him, thanking him for delivering the loot. The agents accompanying him moved toward the magic beasts Izuku had tamed, and the creatures waited patiently for the agents to remove the straps and ropes. Izuku sensed a hint of arrogance from the large bull beast, as if it looked down on them. Communication with dungeon denizens was often one-sided, so he couldn't confirm his suspicions. The young man, an agent of the commission, had a soft voice that snapped Izuku back to reality. He recalled that they had received their assessments at the same time, and the man was a C ranker. The agent confirmed that the payment would be deposited into Izuku's bank account. Nodding, Izuku pulled out his mobile phone to call a friend. He needed to become a pro hero and run his own agency. Provisional heroes working with the commission faced a 20% tax on their income, which was significant for him. With the recent arrival of 𝐒𝐬, his friend Psycho had been acting unusually frantic, constantly muttering and working on various projects. He respected her space and decided to ask her for help, but she brushed him off. He needed more money to secure better gear, which meant reducing that tax. Higher-ranked gates would also provide more income. If he ran his own agency, the tax on raid earnings would drop to 9%, thanks to a law encouraging more awakened individuals to become professional heroes. This legislation also applied to sidekicks working for heroes. As he prepared to leave, Izuku felt the portal begin to close. He could open a gate with a physical gesture, but closing one required no such action. Just as he was about to depart, the commission agent asked him to wait. Curious about the man's request, Izuku paused, considering another gate he wanted to tackle, though it could wait. A red tear opened beside him, causing some onlookers to flinch. Izuku found their reactions amusing. The agent congratulated him on his reawakening and mentioned they had been graded together years ago. Surprised by the kind words, Izuku acknowledged the man's success with the commission and wished him luck on his next raid. After closing the portal, Izuku headed toward another gate, feeling a sense of happiness blooming within him. He arrived at the final gate of the day, a massive and powerful one. He followed proper procedures, knowing that once he completed this task, he could return home to celebrate. A feast awaited him, as a reward for a job well done. He contemplated what to eat, recalling that consuming raw beast flesh wasn't ideal for someone like him. Perhaps he would treat himself to KFC or Pizza Hut. It had been a while since he had gone out. He had been hunting non-stop for hours, with few potential recruits among the monsters he faced. Most had been goblins and hobgoblins, providing little challenge for his snakes. Izuku craved a real challenge, something that would allow him to level up significantly. 1 or 2 level-ups were no longer satisfying, and he felt his progress slowing due to the weak foes he had been defeating. Just then, Kirishima jogged up to him, expressing gratitude for his presence. The manly hero was dressed for his heroic duties, sporting red bracers enhanced with magical properties for added strength, along with boots and breaths designed to withstand various environments and improve his durability. 𝗟𝗚 took immense pride in his hardening quirk, and his hero outfit was a perfect reflection of his beliefs, featuring minimal protective gear. Coupled with his B-rank constitution and rigorous physical training, Kirishima was a formidable force capable of facing a B-rank gate alone. He expressed his gratitude, stating how he was glad to repay his friends in some way. His companion, however, playfully insisted that if he wanted to repay them, he should treat them to a nice meal afterward, which earned a laugh from Izuku. Kirishima was leading a group of 15 sidekicks into the gate, consisting of B and C rank heroes eager for live combat experience. Izuku, having seen some of them at the gym, questioned Kirishima about leading such a group into a B rank gate. Kirishima explained that they had undergone survival training for several months, emphasizing that red gates were unpredictable. They could find themselves in a scorching desert or a swamp filled with hazardous plants. Preparing the recruits early was essential, as the training was meant to equip them for real challenges. Izuku acknowledged Kirishima's reasoning, recognizing the randomness of gates. A group of heroes could either have a routine experience or face life-threatening situations. He noticed Real Steel, a muscular figure commanding others while inspecting equipment, and recalled how the media often portrayed the two as rivals. Both had attended 𝐒𝐬 since their teenage years and had clashed on numerous occasions. Unlike Kirishima, Real Steel specialized in spear and shield combat, a choice Izuku respected. He had observed Real Steel's battles in old recordings and interviews, concluding that his quirk had limitations, especially after witnessing his clash with the villain 𝗟𝗶𝗸. Kirishima confirmed they were joining forces to minimize risks, which Izuku found to be a wise decision. He inquired about the number of freelance heroes joining them and learned they were waiting for one more. Just then, he turned to see 𝐼𝐼𝐬, her face obscured by a medieval-style helmet. She had opted for a heavier set of armor designed for defense, complete with a bulky spear and shield that looked like something out of science fiction. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 proudly announced her upgrade, and Izuku, impressed, noted the high-end A-rank materials she wore, infused with a significant amount of mana. He teasingly remarked on her preparations for battle, to which she responded that given their past experiences, it was wise to be ready. Izuku nodded in agreement, understanding the importance of their current mission. He asked if she had seen the doctor or magic beast lately, to which she replied negatively. Izuku felt a twinge of sympathy for a certain individual, despite knowing he had intended harm against them. The memory of the man's desperate plea for mercy lingered in his mind, reminding him that no one deserved such a fate. 𝐼𝐼𝐬's expression turned somber when they discussed the uncertainty of that individual's fate. Izuku refrained from arguing, recognizing the need to focus on their current task. They both understood that the only solution was to grow stronger. Kirishima's commanding voice broke through the moment, urging all provisional heroes on duty to enter the gate without delay. The two heroes joined the gathering, where Izuku counted at least 18 heroes participating in this mission. Since merging his skills, he had developed a unique ability to sense the auras of those around him. Kirishima addressed the group, informing them they were about to embark on a survival training exercise within a red gate, which elicited nervous reactions among the heroes. He reassured them that the data indicated the red gate was likely to be A-rank at most, with 2 A-rank heroes leading the charge. He encouraged them to remember their training and strategies, emphasizing that true heroism meant facing danger head-on. The heroes, now solemn, absorbed Kirishima's words. Izuku had heard about Kirishima's unconventional training methods, which some deemed perilous. Yet he recognized the value in mentally preparing heroes for future challenges. As they moved toward the gate, Kirishima and Tetsu were the first to step through the blue portal, followed by the other heroes carrying supplies for their mission. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 stepped into the portal without a second thought, followed closely by Izuku. Just as he felt the portal's energy envelop him, a notification appeared, warning him of the re-entry into a dangerous realm. Izuku could only exclaim in surprise as an unseen force propelled him forward, the space behind him closing off. An intense chill washed over him, reminiscent of a frigid winter day. He muttered to himself, realizing they had landed in a snowy landscape. The ground was blanketed in white, and towering trees loomed in the distance, their branches heavy with snow. Kirishima began to instruct the group to form the defensive formation they had practiced, but his words were abruptly interrupted when an arrow struck him, protruding from the back of his head. Izuku recognized the weapon as one used by ice elves, having seen enough footage to know their deadly accuracy. A swift white blur darted through the air, and in a flash, Izuku caught it mid-flight. He exhaled in relief as he examined the arrow, realizing how close they had come to losing 𝐼𝐼𝐬. The woman appeared slightly shaken, her expression as pale as the snow around them. The craftsmanship of the ice elves was evident in their weapons, made from materials that enhanced their lethality. Izuku felt the cold from the arrow creeping into his hand, numbing his grip. As he tightened his hold, the ice elves revealed themselves, perched among the snow-laden branches. They were slender, ethereal beings with androgynous features and blue skin, their pale eyes gleaming with a twisted delight. One of them made a gesture that clearly indicated their intentions, igniting a fierce anger within Izuku. He had never felt such a surge of rage before. He yearned to confront them and make them pay for their actions. The ice elves vanished in a cloud of smoke, and Izuku couldn't help but chuckle at their retreat. Their tactics relied on guerrilla warfare, using stealth to test their opponents. Survivors of their attacks had shared tales of their cunning strategies. Tetsu called out for the healers to check on their allies, while directing a group to clear the area of any lurking enemies and gather resources, knowing they would be there for a while. 4 of them moved as one towards the trees, undeterred by the potential threat of the ice elves. This was not their usual approach. Prolonged battles typically occurred only when they were confident of victory. Trees fell with each strike as 𝗃𝗃𝗃 barked commands. Kirishima also sprang into action, ensuring the heroes were safe and instructing the rangers to establish a perimeter. Izuku checked on Saiko, who seemed unharmed, her earlier fear dissipated. She assured him that her armor provided sufficient protection. He inquired if it had any enhancements against frost, to which she replied that it was capable of withstanding an ice arrow. Saiko then asked if she thought more ice elves would come their way. Izuku took a moment to consider her question before responding that he believed they would indeed return, advising her to be prepared. Saiko remained stoic for a moment before joining the other heroes, who were busy setting up camp and preparing for the night. Meanwhile, Izuku pondered the challenges that lay ahead. The frozen biome was home to numerous formidable magic beasts, with ice elves being among the weaker foes. Creatures like ice bears, ice kobolds, ice trolls, and ice giants roamed the area, and the prospect of recruiting some of them was enticing. However, capturing them would not be easy, and he would need to be ready to answer any questions they might have. He contemplated his strategy, knowing that 𝐒𝐬𝐬 and his constructs could strike again. To strengthen his forces, he needed to enhance the abilities of his soldiers and recruit stronger allies. The idea of transforming the ice elves into werewolves brought a smile to his face as he envisioned the possibilities.